Okay. So welcome to Enrolled Agent Part 3, Lecture number 1, which relates to the unit number 1, and the topic is Practice before the IRS. So that means who is authorized to practice before the IRS body. First, you need to understand what this IRS body is. Actually, the Direct Taxation Department in the United States of America is the Internal Revenue Services, that is referred to as IRS. So, who can actually file the returns? Who can represent the client before the IRS? Any officer or any departmental person? So, that's we are going to study in this very particular unit as well. So, let's get started. So, basically, whenever there is a dispute or disagreement over tax issues arises, obviously, for example, let's take an instance this way. uh, Let me just name the one of the, yeah, for example, Suneet is has joined in this session. So Suneet, emigrates to United States of America, and he has filed his income tax return timely and all that according to him, and he has paid all the taxes over there, but still he receives a notice from the IRS body, which is the Direct Taxation Department of United States of America. Then how to handle this, right? So obviously a person who is
Yes.
authorized to practice before the IRS can take up your case, right? So, welcome to the
Yes.
session of Enrolled Agent Part 3, Unit number 1, Practice before the IRS. So, this is what they are actually talking about here. So, when a dispute or disagreement over tax issue arises, a taxpayer may have to appear before the IRS, and he can use the help of enrolled agents, certified public accountants, attorneys, that means lawyers, or any other individual who is authorized to practice before the IRS may represent the taxpayer. And if we particularly talk about any other individual, so we are going to discuss the nitty gritty of this other individuals part as well in a session of today only. So now let's get started as to who is authorized to practice before the IRS. So first you need to understand what are the rules of practice. So the rules governing practice before the Internal Revenue Services may appear in Treasury Department Circular number 230. Super duper important from the examination perspective. Super duper important. Because you should actually, it should be there on your, fingertips as such. Whatever the rules are stipulated in the circular number 230. So approximately 3 to 4 questions are asked from there itself. Sounds interesting? Yes. So you need to have a crisp understanding
Yes.
with respect to the rules which are incorporated in the circular number 230. Now, and for this very particular purpose, so you can refer to the circular number 230 here. Although it is a 43 pages booklet, it's not required to be read, but you can take it for a reference for whenever you have free time. So you can refer it. However, what we are going to study in this, material, that is more than enough, that is suffice. But this is for additional learning and reading. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now is practice before the IRS. So first we read a person can practice before the IRS subject to condition. The rules prescribed in the circular number 230. Just okay. So we have so far understood as to whatever the rules are there to practice before the IRS, they are stipulated in circular number 230, which are given in Appendix A as such, which I just showed you here. Now, let's understand the intricacies associated with the practice before the IRS. Practice before the IRS means what? It means presentation to the IRS. That means a taxpayer, as such, if he has any issues, he receives a notice from the department as such. So there has to be someone who can, deal on his behalf. So practice before the IRS mean to say presentation to the IRS. That means you are as such representing your client before the IRS department, any of the officers, any of the employees of any matter. When we talk about any matter, you need to keep your focus here for the next 5 minutes. We have said any matter over here, any matter. Any matter mean to say the taxpayer rights, privileges, liabilities under laws or regulations administered by the IRS. This is really important. So that means any matter when we talk about, so that matter has to be related to the taxpayer rights, taxpayer liability towards the tax payment, other privileges or the benefits which he can avail as a taxpayer, or any other law, any other regulation which is administered by the Internal Revenue Services Department. Further, if we talk about the practicing before the IRS, it includes communicating with the IRS for a taxpayer. These 4 points are super duper important, which are to be given pivotal significance. And then these 3 points also, point number 3 and 4, you have to cram it. You have to live it, as if things get settled down in your subconscious mind, because approximately 7 to 8 MCQs will be asked from point number 3 and 4 collectively. Okay, so let's understand it in a very crisp manner. And in the very next session of ours, in tomorrow's session, we will be discussing the MCQs as well. Okay, so practice before the IRS. That means when we talk about this thing, okay, a tax on the taxpayer's behalf, any person who is an enrolled agent, who is a CPA, who is an attorney, or any person who has been given authorization by the IRS department can represent the client or that the taxpayer before the IRS. But the point to be taken into consideration here is that what is this word practice means? What is included in it? First one is communicating with the IRS for a taxpayer. For example, if the taxpayer, as I was incorporating an example over here, in Sudhir's case, for example, Sudhir again is in US right now, has paid the tax, but still he has received a notice from the department. And whatever correspondence ought to be done with the department via email or so. So even if an enrolled agent, CPA, or I will just say the practicing person, okay? So whenever I say practicing person, just imply it as enrolled agent, CPA, attorney, or any other person authorized. So when we talk about communicating with the IRS for a taxpayer, that means you are doing communication on behalf of your client, on behalf of your taxpayer. Second is representing a taxpayer at conferences, hearings, or meetings with the IRS. Could you please tell me the difference between first point and second point? So there has to be a line of distinction between the two, which I'll be just narrating over here in next 2 minutes. Just ponder over, give a thought, and try to figure out the thin line of distinction between these 2 points. Students, my dear students, so you have to understand communicating with the IRS for a taxpayer mean to say you are having as such, a conversation on the taxpayer's behalf with the department or any of the officers. But when we talk about the representing, that means there is a hearing as such in the department, or you'll have to turn in person. When I say in person, that means physical. You'll have to go to the department of the IRS on your client's behalf, right? Then preparing necessary documents and filing them with the IRS for the taxpayer. You have to prepare the necessary documents. For example, whatever the explanation is required according to you. So Sudhir is in US and he is in a dilemma kind of situation. Oh my God, I have to pay this much amount of tax, but according to me, these are the deductions, and I should not pay this tax. Then you have to prepare the necessary documents, and for this very particular purpose, you can take the help of a practicing person. And when I say practicing person, just imply it all EA, CPA, attorney, and other person. Okay. So the person who is preparing the documents on your behalf and filing it with the IRS department for a taxpayer. So that means what? It is included in the definition of practice before the IRS. Fourth is rendering written advice. Fourth is rendering written advice with respect to any entity, any transaction, any plan or arrangement, or other plan or arrangement having a potential for tax avoidance or evasion. That means if a practicing person is giving any kind of advice in a written format to any organization as such, wherein there is having as such a potential for tax avoidance and tax evasion, Tax planning is different. Don't confuse tax planning with the tax avoidance or evasion. Tax evasion mean to say, so there has to be liability, but you are shirking your liability. You're not ready to pay it. And when I say tax planning mean to say there are some, provisions in the rules which are mentioned in the IRC. Whenever I say IRC, that means Internal Revenue Codes, sections, the law, right? So if you are taking benefit of those sections incorporated in the Internal Revenue Code and you are saving your tax, that is tax planning, that is completely as such acceptable. But when you talk about as such potential for tax avoidance or evasion, that means what? Potential word is important here. Potential. That means still it has not been proved as to you are avoiding your taxes or you are evading your taxes. You don't want to pay your taxes as a taxpayer. That means in the given situation, as I have, incorporated one student's name over here. So here is, in the given situation, so he wants a written advice, right? And it may be any entity as such or any plan arrangement anywhere, because Sudhir is having, let's say, a limited liability, sorry, LLC over there, right? So there might be a situation he's having an S corporation. So this, because how many types of entities are there? There are, LLC, INC, right? Then there is, S corporation, C corporation, partnership, and so on. But what is relevant over here is that if you are giving any kind of written advice for any entity or for any transaction, when we talk about the transaction, it may relate to an individual as well, for which the form 1040 is filed, right? So if you are giving any kind of advice to any organization, to any individual, to any plan, to any arrangement for which your client as such has received a notice or maybe an email from the department as such, there has been a situation of tax avoidance, there has been a potential. So when I talk about this word potential, so that means it has still not been declared as to you are evading taxes. The department is having suspicion on you, for which you are seeking the hereby the advice from one of the person who is authorized to practice before the IRS, and for this very particular purpose he is giving a written advice to you. So sounds interesting. So these 4 points, they are to be learned by heart. And when I say to be learned by heart, mean to say they should be there in your subconscious mind immediately, because approximately 7 to 8 questions will be asked from these 4 points. Along with these, do not constitute this third and fourth point collectively. 7 to 8 questions in the examination will be there for sure, 101%. So is there any mnemonic with the help of which you can, as such, keep these in your subconscious mind? For example, communicating, you can take the word C. For the in-person meeting, for example, whether it is a conference or hearing or meeting, so you can take the word I. C, I. Then preparing necessary documents, so you can take the word D from here. And written advice, so you can take the word here WA. So that means CID, CID. And it is easy to, remember this. CID, WA. For the Indian students, especially if I talk about the students from India, so they're like, they can easily recall, right? CID. Sorry, there was a call in between. I had to disconnect that call because lecture is more important as of now. Sorry. So you can remember this word with CIDWA. Now let's proceed further with respect to the who are not as such allowed to practice before the IRS. That will be covering later on, but hereby, what is not constituted as in the definition of practice before the IRS. For example, if you are filing a tax return, an amended return, or a claim for refund for your client, you have simply filed a tax return, or it has already been filed, you have amended that return, or you have just applied for the refund on behalf of your, client or the taxpayer. Does that amount to practice before the IRS? Straight away, big no. It is not constituted as practice before the IRS. Or you are furnishing any kind of information upon request of the IRS. For example, the IRS, and there might be any kind of situation wherein you are furnishing the information upon request by the IRS. For example, you have filed a return on behalf of the taxpayer, and at a later point of time the department of IRS needs additional information, because of which the department has contacted you, and you are furnishing that information because of that reply to the said mail or note, whatever the scenario is. So you are furnishing the information upon the request by the IRS body, by the IRS department of any of its officers or employees. So it is straight away not constituted as practice before the IRS. Third is appearing as a witness for the taxpayer. If you are simply as such, simply and simply, you are appearing as witness for the taxpayer, it is not constituted as practice before the IRS. So in the last 15 minutes, what we have covered so far, what are the key takeaways? So let's give a quick repeat to that. Who can practice? Who are the authorized persons to practice before the IRS? Enrolled agents, certified public accountants, attorneys, and any other individual authorized. Along with this, where are the rules of this practice are incorporated in Circular 230? And who is allowed to practice before the IRS? And who is, as in what is covered in the definition of practice before the IRS and what is not covered, we have covered in point number 3 and 4 respectively, for which we have created a mnemonic. For the practice before the IRS, it's CIDWA. And for do not constitute practice before the IRS, let's make a mnemonic of this as well. Tax return, it's T. Information is I. And witness, for witness, it's W. TIW. TIV. TIV. TIW. Okay. So this is how you can remember this one as well. And in the point number 2, just to give you a quick recap for the same, who is, if we talk about the practice before the IRS, that particularly means you are talking about the rights, privileges, liabilities which are administered by the IRS with respect to the taxpayer. All right, let's proceed further. Who may practice? In the very first paragraph itself, we just covered the nitty and gritties in a very quick manner. But now we are going to have a comprehensive discussion in this very particular context there too, as to who is allowed to actually practice, who may practice, right? So, if you see over here, that is really important. Who may practice before the IRS? Only authorized persons may practice before the IRS, that is practitioners. And my dear students, the model which is used over here is may, not can. That means this list is, although particularly given by the department, but the definition of authorized person may vary with the, maybe in the future course of time, they may, as such, make additions or deletions with respect to the persons who may practice before the IRS. That is why they have used the word may here, not can. Can is for 100% possibility, may is for, less than 100% possibility. So who may practice before the IRS? Only authorized persons may practice before the IRS and will be referred to as practitioners. First of all, attorneys. Attorneys, if we talk about lawyers and all, an attorney is a member in good standing of the bar of the highest court of any state, possession, territory, commonwealth, or district of Columbia. So that means whenever we talk about the lawyer or the attorney, he has to be member in good standing, right? There should not be any kind of, as such, he's not declared, there is no notice as such. There are no, as such, if we talk about the felony against him, felony, you understand? FELONY, that means any kind of proceedings are against him or so he is found a culprit. It should not be this case. Clean, he should be a clean person. Clean person in the sense member in good standing, mean to say, so there are no as such cases against him. So attorney is simply a member in good standing of the bar of the highest court of any state. This is important. Highest court of any state, whether it is state, possession, territory, commonwealth, or district of Columbia. Although this last line, if you talk about this last line, it is not that much relevant, I repeat, If you simply remember this word attorney, it is more than enough. Attorney who is a member in good standing of any court, highest court of any state. But is it essential to remember this one as well? Possession, territory, Commonwealth, or District of Columbia? Not really. It is not ought to be remembered. But still, let's take 0.001% probability uh, in any exceptional situation wherein the algorithm by the Prometric Center of is in such a manner it may ask you. So how you can remember this? Possession, territory, Commonwealth, and District of Columbia. So PTCC. PTCC. Possession, territory, Commonwealth, and Columbia District. Although it is not that much relevant, which I have just narrated you here. So attorneys, they can practice before the IRS. CPAs, a certified public accountant in United States of America who is not suspended from practice by the Office of Professional Responsibility and who is currently qualified to practice as a CPA in any state. What does that mean? Sounds interesting. It has got a very two-folded aspect over here. What's that? So if we talk about here the intricacies, the point to be taken into consideration here is that a CPA who is not suspended from practice, so that means he's still doing practice. He has he's not been suspended as of now for the time being in force. Doesn't matter about the past or in the future. At present, he's not suspended from practice. So that means it gives a clear indication a CPA in practice only can is as such allowed to practice before the IRS, as the name itself suggests. And when we talk about this suspension, so he has not been suspended by Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR. Second condition is that who is currently qualified to practice as a CP in any state. So there are 50 states in United States of America, as we are having 28 states here in India and 7 union territories. Just like that, we are having approximately 50 states in United States of America. So it's not like that a person who clears the theoretical framework of 4 papers of CPA is can actually, start doing practice. No, first you need to procure a license from one of the state wherein you will be doing practice, one of any 50 states. And if you are holding that license with you and as of now you are not suspended from practice, then thumbs up, you can practice before the IRS for representing any of your clients there too. All right, so far we have covered attorneys, for which, here we made a mnemonic PTCC, then CPAs, enrolled agents, then enrolled actuaries for limited purpose listed under section 10 3D of circular 230. Even enrolled actuaries, so you're not supposed to go through the intricacies of here section 10 of 230. You're only supposed to remember from examination perspective as of now. Only the enrolled actuaries only for limited purposes. So that means exhaustive power is full rights are not there. Enrolled actuaries can represent before the IRS for some of the purposes. Then enrolled retirement plan agents for limited purpose again. So if we talk about the limited purpose, so wherein the full rights are not there as they are given to the attorneys, as they are given to the CPA, as they are given to the enrolled agents, it's not like that. Here in the situation like is, for the actuaries and retirement plan agents, limited powers are given for some of the cases to practice before the IRS, right? Now, let's talk about AFSP, Annual Filing Season Program participants. So there is a limited right to represent clients before the IRS in according to the non-credential preparers only if they participate in the IRS Annual Filing Season Program and they must have prepared the return. What does that mean? It means if you talk about AFSP's Annual Filing Season Program participant, the name itself suggests season. And when we talk about this season, it's not weather wala season. It's not like that. It's not a weather season. It means tax season, right? So Annual Filing Season Program participants, AFSPs, so they have limited rights. First, you need to understand they have limited rights to represent their client before the IRS. And this they can do only and only if they participate in the IRS Annual Filing Season Program and they must have prepared the return. So here the conjunction which has been used is and. So that means both conditions need to be complied with, both, because there is and, not or. So that means the first condition is that they have to participate in the IRS annual filing season program, as well as they must have prepared the return. Okay, I repeat, annual filing season program participants, they have limited rights to represent their clients before the IRS for the non-credential preparers only and only if two conditions are complied with. The first condition is they should participate in the IRS annual filing season program, and the second condition which needs to be taken into consideration here is that they must have prepared the return as well. Then comes the seventh type of person who can practice before the IRS, that is enrolled individuals if specifically permitted, and unenrolled individuals if specifically permitted. What does that mean? Any other category for which the special declaration is given by the IRS. Unenrolled individuals if specifically permitted by whom? By IRS. And last one but not the least, appraisers. That's why, my dear students, at the very beginning of this, here we studied who may practice before the IRS. We didn't use the word can here, because if we had used the model, the can here, the auxiliary verb can over here, so that means all this list is complete in itself. Although they have incorporated the word may, so that means there may be some other persons, and those other persons are seventh point, unenrolled individuals if they are specifically permitted. Then obviously the eighth one, appraisers. Now let's give a quick recap to this. Types of practitioners: attorneys, CPAs and EAs who have unlimited rights to practice before the IRS. However, if we talk about annual filing season program participants or other types, for example, what? Retirement plan agents and actuaries. So they have limited rights. Another difference, preparation of return or claim for refund. If we talk about an attorney, CA, CPA, or an enrolled agent, so they can sign the returns and refunds when completed all or substantially all of a return or a refund. This is same for both actually. So when you are actually preparing the return or you are applying for the refund of the client so that the client can claim it, so for this very particular purpose, you have to sign the returns and refunds when completed all or substantially of it, of a return or refund. So that means even if you receive, let's take an instance this way, receives a refund from the department, it becomes your core responsibility to give the same to whom? To your client, and the given situation is the taxpayer. Then is representation. Any person, if you talk about an attorney, CPA, or an enrolled agent, representation mean to say before anyone at the IRS. Anyone mean to say any departmental officer, any employee, anyone. For examination and appeals as well, and for any return, any refund. So four things are relevant for examination of, the past tax payments and the documents, for appeals, for return, for refund. Okay. But when we talk about the AFSPs or the limited rights which are given to the enrolled actuaries or the enrolled retirement plan agents, so for that very particular purpose, before IRS revenue agents, customer service and employees. So here the terminology which has been used is not anyone, stipulated person, IRS revenue agents, CSR, that means customer service representatives, and employees. Then if we talk about the limited rights person, so they can represent only during examination, but they are not at all allowed for appeals. For example, here examination and appeals, here limited right person and AFSP is only examination, not, they cannot appeal on behalf of the client. Then if we talk about AFSPs and limited rights person, for example, who are the limited right person? As we covered above, enrolled actuaries, enrolled retirement plan agents. So they can, as such, if we talk about this way, return the tax preparer signed himself or herself for the period under examination only, but they cannot appeal on behalf of the client. And if we talk about AFSPs, they must participate in AFSP or be specifically permitted to practice before the IRS. And when we talk about the kind of tax advice which is ought to be given by attorney, CP, or enrolled agent, so unlimited tax advice is there, including tax planning as well. So an attorney, a CPA, or an enrolled agent, for example, in the given situation, as we covered the example associated with one of the students, Sudhir. So Sudhir doesn't know the tax provisions. Let's take an instance this way, but he is there in US and he wants to, as such, if some tax planning can be done out of the provisions incorporated over there in the IRC. IRC is Internal Revenue Code. All the sections are mentioned in the Internal Revenue Code of IRS. So if there are some provisions which can be as such be taken benefit as such, which can be explained by the attorney, CP, or EA to the client, so definitely. But when we talk about the AFSPs and limited right person, so their rights are confined only to the return or refund preparation. Can the tax planning, is the tax planning included here? Come on, tell me. Is the tax planning included here for the limited persons as well? So the answer is no, a big no for AFSP and other persons. Okay. So far in our today's session, we have covered whatever we have covered. It's really very, very important because lots of MCQ are asked from this very particular, these particular topics as well. Okay. And that's all for this session today.